Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Stephen King Cast, one man's musings on the works of Stephen King. Each week, I'll review one entry in the bibliography of Stephen King in the chronological order of publication. And this week, I am here to talk about the 1993 ABC TV miniseries adaptation of Stephen King's The Tommyknockers, a movie that I could have sworn that I reviewed already back in the day after I had reviewed the Tommyknockers book. And so when I was preparing, this stretch of the podcast where I am reviewing the adapted television works of Stephen King, I could not find it because I wanted to re-examine it. I wanted to provide a new intro and get some new thoughts on there. And I realized that every thought that I was going to have was going to be a new thought because I never reviewed it. Then I remembered that at the time when I had planned on reviewing it, it wasn't available. It wasn't available on streaming anywhere, and it wasn't on YouTube yet, which is where I wound up watching it over the last couple of days. So for anyone that has not seen the Tommyknockers ever, or hasn't seen it since the heydays of the 90s on ABC, or maybe you taped it like I did and watched it again and again. But it has been a long time, and I am really excited to talk about the Tommyknockers today. But first, I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for listening and for tuning in. And for longtime listeners, thank you for always being there. For new-time listeners, welcome to the Stephen King Cast, the current stretch of show that you have just joined for the first time. Like I said, I am dedicating this portion of the podcast for the near foreseeable future on the adapted works on television of Stephen King, because throughout the years that has been a big area that I haven't really touched upon. And then in looking at all of the televised things that he has adapted over the years, I realized that there's a lot of gaps. So I wanted to go back and give myself some consistency, and give all of the listeners some consistency on what to look forward to. So that has been the focus lately. So I have re-released my thoughts on the Stephen of Salem's Lot, and it with some new thoughts. What's really good about being able to do this is that in my original reviews that I've done, it's been almost 10 years. So in the example of it, that was really good, because not only was I able to provide the original review, but at the same time, the the Bill Skarsgård movies have come out, and It Welcome to Derry just finished, and those versions had not been available at the time of the original recording. So I was able to contextualize my review of it with the newer movies, which I think that's what's really neat about having done this podcast for over 10 years now, is that there's always new information to take into account when you're thinking about things. And now that I've been doing it for over a decade, and not having reviewed some things in over a decade, more information comes out, and there's new information to reference and contextualize when thinking about things. We're always learning, we're always growing, and opinions change sometimes, and that's important. So this has been a very interesting stretch, because not only do I get to review some of these properties for the first time, but I get to re-examine some of the things that I've already reviewed, with new and added information that I think that is relevant and it's helpful. So today we're going to be talking about the Tommyknockers, but in the meantime, if at any point you have any thoughts on the Tommyknockers, on Salem's Lot, on It, on Sometimes They Come Back, on the Golden Years, on The Stand, on The Langoliers, on the Stephen King approved version of The Shining starring Steven Weber, Storm of the Century, Trucks, Rose Red, The Diary of Ellen Rimbauer, the Rob Lowe starring Salem's Lot, Kingdom Hospital, Desperation, Bag of Bones, Big Driver, 11/22/63, Mr. Mercedes, The Mist, Castle Rock, The Outsider, the 2020 version of The Stand, What else we got? Lisi's Story, Chapel Wait, The Institute, anything that has Stephen King on your TV. Whether it was back in the network television heyday or recently on streaming, or if you have any thoughts on Stephen King at all, write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. If you have any free time on your hands, leaving a review on iTunes will greatly help me out. And you can always follow me on Facebook and on Blue Sky, on TikTok, and on Instagram. So, but more than anything else, I love getting listener email. So feel free to write in to stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. So without further ado, let's talk about the Tommyknockers. The Tommyknockers 1993 ABC TV miniseries. Like I said, I have positive memories of watching this. I was a kid at the time, so I knew that I was going to have positive memories of this. But at the same time, from what I remember of the Tommyknockers, and it's been decades since I've watched it, I remember it even being a kid like that. It was cheesy and not the best. This is sandwiched really in between It, which, as you know, in my discussion of It, that helped put It, and it helped put Pennywise on the map, on the Mount Rushmore of great monster villains. It scared a generation. And then, so that's on one end, and on the other end is The Stand, which was a really big deal when that came out. And The Stand itself harkened back to the heyday of TV miniseries. So I mean, this was before what we call prestige television today, and though television was always looked at as the lesser of the two audiovisual mediums, that for decades the place to be, and where all of the recognition and accolades and acclaim and respect for the most part went to movies and movie stars. But there were moments where the conversation and the cultural importance came from the television, and there were just landmark cultural touchstones of classic TV miniseries, whether it be Roots or Lonesome Dove or Centennial, Shogun before it was a FX show. What else? We had the Thornbirds, V. When V came out, that was huge. So there was always every now and then there was this big TV miniseries that had everyone talking, and I think that The Stand falls into that. And between the cultural introduction to Pennywise through It and the big nature of The Stand, we had Tommyknockers, which does not measure up to either one of them, and it is by no means a great movie. It's by no means a good movie, but it is a movie that, in some ways, watching it now in 2026, there were, and though it came out in 1993, and though the book was written in the late 80s, there were things that struck me in this viewing, because Stephen King could not have known this, but it really speaks to what we find ourselves in 2026 today, in a way that is far more relevant actually at the time of publication or when this first aired, and I'll get to that. So to begin, moving through the woods, it establishes the town as a quaint and idyllic town. It's lovely, and then it will cut between the establishing shots of the town and the woods, and the music gets a little bit ominous every time it cuts the woods, which I think it's nice. It's effective. It's setting. It's visually saying, and through the music, that something is out there, something is wrong. And then we meet Jimmy Smits, his character Guard, running through the woods in a full suit. Okay, now this predates by over a decade Jack Shephard from Lost, when we first meet him running through the jungle with a full suit on. There's something unsettling about this. it's effective because why is someone wearing a suit in, well, in the case of Lost, in the middle of a jungle? Why is someone wearing a suit in the middle of the woods? You're not supposed to wear a suit in the middle of the woods. This combination of visuals of a man in a well dressed in a suit in the middle of in the woods with the woods themselves. There's something wrong about that, and the panicked look and the slow motion of Jimmy Smits. It is haunting. It's unsettling. He's looking for someone named Bobby. He's approaching someone with their back to us. Yes, this is Bobby. A woman turns around. Her eyes are green. And then there's this effective flash of light washing everything out in emerald. And that is the beginning. It's a good way of going about it. It sets the mood. It makes you wonder. We know to expect something from the woods. Here are our main characters. It's I'm going to be bagging on this this ABC TV miniseries for most of this review, but there are things that I think that they are able to effectively convey to us, and I thought this was a good beginning. We then meet Robert Carradine. Robert Carradine, for me, most famously, who played Lewis in Revenge of the Nerds 2 and Revenge of the Nerds 2: Nerds in Paradise. He is with his family, cooking. He's clearly the owner of the town diner. He's cooking. He's laying down the law. He's yelling at his kids. He immediately does not come across as likable. He is incredibly negative towards his children, especially Hilly. This is clearly in contrast to the relationship between the grandfather and Hilly, who quote unquote spoils him, according to Robert Carradine. And again, it just really shows that more than anything else, Robert Carradine's character is just a jerk, because there was nothing about Hilly that seemed out of control or spoiled, mean, destructive, lazy, unruly. He just seemed like a kid. And Ev, the grandfather, played by E.G. Marshall, just understands that as any normal human being would. E.G. Marshall, playing Ev, then talks to Hilly about magic and the land known as the Burning Woods, which supposedly has magic. After talking about how magic this place is, he gives the warning of, you must never go in there alone, which to me, I was thinking of The Simpsons, and my daughter, by the way, has in the span of 3 months, watched all 37 seasons of The Simpsons, and it's crazy to me now that she now knows more about The Simpsons than I do. But anyway, when Ev says, there's magic in the woods. Everyone always talked about these woods growing up. There's, it's a place of great power and magic and mystery, but you must never go in there alone, which I immediately thought of Chief Wiggum from The Simpsons telling Ralphie, you're not supposed to go in there. What is your fascination with my forbidden closet of mystery? Or Judd Crandall from the Pet Cemetery telling Lewis about the Pet Cemetery and saying, yeah, but you should never go bury anyone in there. From there, we meet Joanna Cassidy. Joanna Cassidy from Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Blade Runner and 6 Feet Under. So I'll get to this later, but one thing that I really enjoyed about this was it's a time machine, and going back and seeing all of these familiar faces from my youth in their youth. It was really something special. But Joanna Cassidy plays Sheriff Ruth. In a bizarre sequence, which she's taking a classroom of kids through the police station. That's not bizarre. What's bizarre is that it includes the world's creepiest doll collection. After one student is traumatized from this, understandably so, Sheriff Ruth says an even more traumatizing thing, which is that the child should come back alone to visit with the dolls. Why is there a room full of dolls? Why is this an appropriate use of municipal space? And why does Ruth think that traumatizing this child away from the comfort of his peers and safe adults is the appropriate response to what happened? The scene raises far more questions than it should. So, for instance, what is the relationship between these dolls and the rest of the town? Is this something well known about their chief of police? If how do people feel about these dolls? And if someone were to run against Ruth, would they be able to effectively use the dolls as an anti-doll platform to win? How do the rest of the police department employees feel about sharing space with their boss's strange hobby? And what was the space being used for before it became her own personal storage closet? Um, I will talk about the dolls later in a very famous sequence from this TV miniseries. So let's put a pin in that. We then meet Cliff DeYoung and Tracy Lord's mailman characters, Joe and Nancy, and it's quickly apparent that they're having an affair, and the show will constantly remind you, in case you forgot, that they are having an affair, that these are two characters that all they do is have an affair. They have no other function on this show but to have an affair in the most affair-having way. This information coming on the heels of having just met Joe's wife, Becca. So, of any of the actors present in this film, I believe that Tracy Lords is the one that is the most 1993. She was a hot commodity there for a while, and she's perfectly cast in this role, playing into a cultural reputation that she had at the time, and she is game for it. I didn't know going back into this, how she was going to be, but she really brings it. She is a cartoonish villain, a very cartoonish character, and you might argue that she's the only one that really understands her assignment. Everyone else is kind of all over the place, but she demonstrates some acting chops that makes this character pop, and she's always fun to watch throughout the entire two episodes that we have with them. And then after meeting a number of the peripheral town members, we meet our main character, Bobby, in the woods with Pete, about to change her dog. Her dog's name is Pete. About to change the course of her life and the lives of the rest of the town. Bobby takes a pratfall down a slope and discovers what she thinks is a can, but quickly is drawn to the magnetic metal while Pete tries to warn her. He's quickly shot with a bolt of green light, and against his protesting, Bobby begins digging. Now, here is the rule of thumb. Always listen to your dogs. No matter what they're doing, always listen to your dogs. If you haven't seen the movie, speaking of dogs and horror, if you haven't seen Good Boy, please check out Good Boy. It's a brilliant idea for a film, because one of the tropes of horror is that the house animal, whether it's the cat, whether it's the dog, always senses the evil before the humans do. Whether it's a tale of possession, whether it's a family moves into a haunted house. In this case, it's the owner finds something in the woods, but the animals always know that there's something horror. There's a horror element there, and so to have Good Boy, wonderful movie with an incredible dog actor. The dog is the main character, and we see the malevolence through the eyes of the dog, and the dog becomes the hero because the dog is just trying to protect its owner. For any fan of dogs, if you love dogs, you're gonna love Good Boy. Like I said, it is an incredible performance by it. It sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but it really is an incredible performance by a dog. But listen to your dog when your dog is barking. Like just last month, middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, my dog starts barking. My dog will bark every now and then when she wakes up. She'll wake herself up on the couch, get a little spooked, and bark. I'll get on my bed. I'll stand at the top of the stairs. She'll know that I'm at the top of the stairs. She'll quiet down. Sometimes the curtains will blow in the when the air is blowing through the house. She might see something, and she's just being a good guard dog. And sometimes my neighbor will, who has to get up early for work, sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning, she'll hear the car, him get in the car and drive off, and she'll bark. But once I go downstairs, once I tell her everything's okay, like she'll stop. But there was this one night she was barking. I came downstairs and she was like really worked up. It's like, what is going on? Are you okay? We're okay. We're okay. I sat with her. I checked the house out. I'm like, is everything all right? Nothing that I could notice. I checked the ring. I didn't see anyone outside. And I was like, we're good. We're good. You're okay. And I went back upstairs. She kept on barking. I'm like, all right, okay. I come back downstairs. I'm like, okay, what evil force is lurking through my house that I just can't see right now at 3 something in the morning? And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, calm down. Everything is okay. Like, I just think that she's just spooked or whatever. And I think that she's just being extra, or I don't know what she wants. And then I see the lights. All right. And I didn't notice it at first because it was at the other end of the street, but I saw some flashing lights, and there was a fire truck. Or at first it was actually a police officer. And then I proceed to watch as emergency vehicle after emergency vehicle after emergency vehicle, 2 police cars, an ambulance, a fire truck, all arrive on our street due to something that occurred. And everyone is okay, everyone's safe. But you know, this is something that my dog noticed before I did, and I was going to just dismiss her. But no, listen to your dog. At the end of the day, listen to your dog. Bobby, listen to Pete. Pete's trying to warn you. Bobby doesn't listen to Pete. If she just listened to Pete, this movie would not take place. And some people might, double down that maybe she should have listened to Pete. Okay, then we meet Guard in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. It serves 2 functions. One, to introduce our protagonist and his conflict of the temptation of alcohol with the information that he is a poet. Back in Haven, we're introduced to State Trooper Butch, who gives us a dairy reference, one of the first Stephen King televised Easter eggs. Now, remember that this came a few years after the smash hit adaptation of It. Butch, by the way, is played by legendary character actor John Ashton, most famous for his roles in Beverly Hills Cop and Midnight Run. It's very clear that Butch has a thing for Ruth, and you can't help but root for these two. The next day, Bobby takes Pete to the vet after a rough night of barking and reacting to a storm. Realizing that his cataracts appear to be disappearing, she takes him to the vet, who confirms that the old dog seems to be regaining his eyesight. Unfortunately, the presence of the Tommyknocker affected Pooch is having an adverse effect on the rest of the animals in the office. Back in New York, Guard recites his new poetry, which turns out to be old poetry. But I give Jimmy Smits, who, by the way, watching this in the year of 2026, looking back on 1993, Jimmy Smits has not aged. That's incredible. Like this, it's incredible how he has just looked like Jimmy Smits for decades at the age that he is. But anyway, I give Jimmy Smits all the credit in the world for being able to sell this. Providing art form from an artist in a movie or television is a difficult thing, whether it is an artist needs to display their painting and they're supposed to have some renown, or a musician, whenever there is any sort of story in which there is a famous musician that requires the filmmakers and the music team to be able to create music that would make you think that the music that's being produced is actually something that would be have significant cultural impact in the real world. Same thing with writers or stand-up comedians. If there's if there's a story about a stand-up comedian, those jokes better be funny. And so it's the same thing with writers and poets. You have to be able to convey that the words that are being spoken, that the language that is being written and performed, is, if not of actual quality, is able to mask itself as quality, so that you are able to just go along with the suspension of disbelief. Now, is this TV movie poetry good? Certainly not. Is Jimmy Smits' poetry reading good? No, not at all. But he is committed to this bit, and he tries his best. Bobby heads back into the woods. She does some digging and unearths more of the green glowing metal, while Hilly and his brother explore the woods while giving a shout out to the Micmac Indians. Shout out to you, Micmacs, most famously known for their burial ground in Pet Cemetery. The kids see a green glow in the distance and they run off. Guard, meanwhile, is given the what for passing off old poetry as new material and thrown under the bus as a hack writer and a drunk. Not having the emotional resiliency to withstand the insult, and most likely looking for an excuse to drink, he dives back into the vodka. Before long, he's cartoonishly drunk, fights a man with an umbrella, and exit through a second story window. Now, I don't know. Alcoholism takes many forms in life, and everyone suffers from alcoholism in their own way. And I never want to um, make light of someone's addiction, because I understand that it is a true and real struggle. But when it's depicted like this, and I'm not saying that it doesn't exist like this, um, but I have never seen anything like this. I understand that they have to demonstrate how damaging the alcoholism is for this character, but to me, this is it. It really just becomes like Bugs Bunny acting as if he's drunk. Like this is it is when I say it's cartoonish, it's very cartoonish, and I don't know. I've never seen anything of this sort. Actually, I take that back. I have seen some people act in ways like this, but the effects of this kind of behavior had less to do with alcoholism and more to do with other things going on. But I don't know. I just, for me, when we cover alcoholism or addiction, which is at the heart of this story, I don't know if handling it in such an over the top way is honoring the struggle and the reality in what is otherwise a very outlandish movie and subject. So, I mean, if you have a story that is so conceptually out there, you need to root it in a reality that is that tethers the concept to our understanding of day to day life. And so when you present the struggle and the conflict and the relatable part as being more outlandish than the aliens invading a small town, I think that that's a tonal uh, calibration that really feels off to me. Um, we then get the opening sequence. Once he has fallen out of the second story window, thinking that he is walking through the front door, we get that opening sequence. From the beginning of this this opening, when I described Lost and him running through the woods and discovering a possessed Bobby without the flashing light this time, but it's enough for him to realize that something's wrong. He wakes up from his nightmare. He's on a beach outside the city, and he makes his way back to Haven. When his driver can't get music on the radio, we learn about Guard's metal plate in his head. Chekhov's metal plate. We'll see that later. It'll definitely play a big part of the story. Back in Haven, Becca is helping Ruth get dolled up for Butch. They go on a date, see a movie, get some ice cream. While they're on their date, Ruth spots Joe in the midst of a dalliance with Nancy, because don't forget, these characters are having an affair. They're having more of an affair than anyone has ever had an affair. Their affair is more affairing than any affair that's ever affaired. But Joe is a slimy, slimy character. This show does a good job showing just how kind Becca is, supporting her husband, rushing out of the house in a bathrobe to give him his sandwich, thinking he's about to go on a fishing trip with the boys. He's going to go cast his fly rod, but not in the way that she thinks. Guard returns to town to reunite with Bobby, who's already acting under its influence. At this stage, the Tommyknockers' influence is like taking Molly, and just now she's high on Tommy, on the Tommyknockers. Bobby takes him into the woods to experience this euphoria himself. She's been busy, clearly, having dug out a sizable portion of the ship. When she gets giddy at the glowing metal, Guard reacts poorly, with an instant headache, and even worse when he touches it. The plate in his skull starts pushing out of his head, and he begins going into convulsions with an 11 hopper styled nosebleed to boot. Back at the marshal's house, Hilly starts speaking to a strange voice. In the woods, the ship begins pulsating. Bobby and Guard make up. Nancy and Joe return to his car and are besieged by a glowing light and shaking ground. Nancy begins to fall under the spell of the Tommyknockers. The next day, the townspeople begin to show the effects of the Tommyknockers: creativity, the urge to build, and incorporating the green shining energy into the ideas begin to define everyday existence. And the Rube Goldberg style inventions are interesting, and they're fun to look at. The Tommyknockers start to take more of an active role when the love host starts talking to Becca through her TV to confirm her repressed suspicion that he's having an affair, which at the time of this recording, which is in January of 2026, I just finished watching Pluribus. And there are so many parallels between the Tommyknockers and Pluribus now, which clearly were not anything that was on the mind of Stephen King, because this Pluribus wasn't even was not a concept at the time. And both concepts play up and play off of the what we've seen from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, this shared hive mind. But it is interesting to watch this so closely after Pluribus, which in the introductory episode to Pluribus, we get exactly what's happening to Becca with Carol, Reese Horn's character, where someone on the television is talking directly to her, except in Pluribus, the whole shtick is that everyone that's of the hive mind is very pleasant, and they are there to support our main character as best they can, and please that main character. Whereas this, of course, this hive mind of the Tommyknockers has insidious intentions. But this was just with Pluribus having been the pop culture hit that it was, and as far as I know, the highest rated show on Apple TV. Just to see this in such close proximity, it was a treat. And again, kind of going back to Ka is a wheel. It all comes round again. These concepts are all cyclical. As Guard and Bobby debate keeping the discovery of a secret or going to the authorities, Joe and Nancy continue to make out. They are the only two people working for the post office, and neither of them do their jobs. Again, like I've talked about it, but it is really comical how over the top this affair is. Much in the way that the Guard's alcoholism and his actions at that reception were cartoonish and Looney Tunes. Again, if you just picture these characters as like Pepe Le Pew, it doesn't it make more sense if you think about these characters through the lens of cartoons. When Bobby gets to the post office, not only is it obvious that something is going on with the two of them, but if she couldn't read it through the body language, she now has the ability to read minds. And their thoughts are as over the top and obvious as their actions have been. The next day, we get the birthday party with Hilly and the disappearance of Davy. Now, this is one of the highlights of the book, and I gotta say it's effective in this movie as well. Part of what makes it work as much as it does is the fact that it looks very believable and realistic. This is not an over-the-top party. There aren't 1 million people there. It doesn't look like it's been run through the Hollywood cycle. It just looks like someone's backyard. It's kind of small. It's not unbelievable at the setup or the porch as the stage. If this was made now, it would be incredibly glamorous and stylish. This is very, very basic. And that's what, to me, makes it very believable and makes it work. The disappearance itself is very Twilight Zone, and it's very, very haunting. There's a harrowing nature to this because you can't explain it. And the vulnerability that comes from Hilly in this scene, and the guilt that washes over him, and the daunting realization from the adults that something has happened that they can't explain, all works wonders. It's one of the most important scenes from the book, and one that I gotta say, they pulled off here in the miniseries. While back at the Paulson house, we get our first death as Becca rigs the TV to electrocute Joe when he goes to turn it off. That night, Guard finds Bobby's auto typewriter generating ideas without doing any of the work. And this, to me, again, this was written in the late 80s. This came out in 1993, but this is a sci-fi movie that very much works in 2026, considering the role that AI has come to play over the last couple years, and it hasn't even gotten started yet. Uh, the world of AI that we currently find ourselves living in means that level of everyday creativity and that struggle that we force ourselves through during the creative process, which will lead to a spark of imagination or inspiration in the most unlikely of times and places. It is born out of that struggle, but that struggle is receding now with the over reliance on AI. So to see an entire book be written by an automated, in this case, machine, but it's not hard to view this machine as an AI program. It is, again, this is by no means a good story, but it is a story that, strangely enough, feels more of a place at times in 2026 than it did in 1993. So to speed things up, Hilly's missing, Joe is dead, Becca's in the insane asylum, and the rest of the town gathers in the center of town for the 4th of July while the Tommyknockers light magic green fireworks over the town. And that's the end of part 1. In part 2, things start to escalate as Bobby starts to suffer physically, even if she says that she feels great. Similarly, Robert Carradine can only focus on his new BLT machine rather than his missing child. Throughout the town, people are acting odd, notably through the eyes of Ev, Guard, and Ruth, all characters who aren't willing to drink the Kool-Aid. Their skepticism functions as a shield against the willingness to succumb to the decision of the masses. In this case of Guard, it's also the steel plate in his head. But there's an important message at the heart of this. Again, just as I said about the role of AI being making this a strangely relevant sci-fi story to tell in 2026. In the same way that it's important here to think about some things, that skepticism, critical thinking, and the ability to ask questions in the face of a reality accepted by a large portion of the community, it's a healthy thing. Blind acceptance leads to corruption, to rot, and death of a town. You extrapolate that to a larger scale, and there's something to be said about where we're at in 2026. Though this was written in the 80s, though this came out in 93, this is resonant in ways today that were not even apparent when I first reviewed this book less than a decade ago. In the woods, Bobby attempts to resist whatever the spaceship is telling her, but she quickly succumbs and literally embraces the machine over what she's struggling with, which we quickly learn is the sacrifice of her beloved dog, Peter. And with this, her humanity rapidly begins to crumble, while Guard watches on, unable to help in a town that seems all the more willing to let itself become possessed. The subtext then becomes text as Guard confronts Bobby, and they compare their addictions with all of the elegance of an after-school special. Ruth, being one of the only ones, her and Butch, still looking for the missing child, discovers Bobby's new treasure in the woods, and as well she discovers a manic, affected Bobby. Okay, and then what happens from here is now that Ruth has confronted Bobby and discovered this, the hive mind surging through Bobby and the ship, the Tommyknockers, they realize that Ruth is now a threat, and we get the scene from this miniseries. It's the payoff to the creepy dolls. And it is clear to me that it is backwards manufactured, as if the idea was based on the image of dolls attacking a character and then working backwards to get there. But this is still a highlight to me of the show that breaks the slow-paced monotony of the preceding portion of the story. This is a scene that is goofy, it's silly, it's fun. The dolls menacingly mock her while they physically overpower her in the dumbest of ways. It is not believable. It is contrived and it's stupid, but my God, is it awesome. Keep in mind at this time, Child's Play was all the rage. Child's Play 2 had just come out the year before, I believe. Puppet Master. Remember Puppet Master, guys? For those of you that are old enough, I mean, when you would go into the movie store, Puppet Master, the series of Puppet Master movies would just line the video store shelves in the horror section. And then there was the trilogy of terror Zuni Doll. That had been ingrained into pop culture consciousness over the last couple decades. So to have this, and of course there's also Talking Tina. So to have these killer dolls, it was very much of the time in the popular zeitgeist. But it's still, I mean, it sticks out like a sore thumb. But I don't mind it because, like I said, everything that we've been seeing before, leading up to this, there's just been a repetition of, we check in with the townspeople. They're starting to come, they're getting more and more overcome with the possession by this alien ship. Guard struggles with his addiction. He debates whether or not he's going to take a drink. It's very much of that Joe and Nancy are having an affair. Like it's very much the same thing. So when you get this scene, or the even better, the actual disappearance of a child, it really shows the threat level of what's occurring here. It's not just a possession; it's an active act of harm against other people. And like I said, it's fun. To have the Tommyknockers possess the dolls is so silly. But it's definitely worth it. Too late, Ruth. Outside of Haven, in the dairy hospital, away from the poisonous atmosphere of the townspeople and Tommyknockers, Ev is able to look at things clearly, and before him lies his dying grandson, who is missing teeth and clearly ill. Back in Haven, Nancy shows off the famous lipstick zapper. Again, it's a stupid part of the show, but you got to give them credit for committing. With Ruth missing, Butch is the last cop with independent thought who is desperately trying to make sense of what's occurring and refuses to give up despite the physical deterioration occurring as the town itself is actively poisoning him. The townspeople start to devolve from poisoned and addicted victims to dangerous and active threats against those that stand in their way. They mislead Butch's search. I'm sorry, they mislead Guard's search for Butch, and Butch's men are taken out by Nancy's lipstick zapper. Guard is tempted and succumbs to the drink. The pickle is shot, and he's neutralized without needing to have lost his life. Drunk, he watches on as Bobby assembles the townspeople to prepare for the becoming, which is described as being one voice sharing a shared consciousness or a hive mind. Again, like I said, it's very, very similar to me to Pluribus. And if you haven't seen Pluribus, check it out. It's worth watching. I think that everyone should have an opinion on Pluribus. I don't know if it's going to be for everyone because the show is slow and it's taking a very large concept and focusing it on one person who is by design not supposed to be the most likable person that you're going to spend time with, which is part of the story. There's a lot built in and baked into Pluribus about the nature of existence, about individuality, about collectivism, about cultures that care about the greater good, about our role in America being so individualist. It's on the nature of creativity. It's on the nature of, it discusses the self-importance, thinking about others, empathy, and about those are all the themes that are percolating within it, told within a story that is about the assimilation of humanity through this collective hive mind. So the sci-fi is right there, but it is done in a way that you really haven't experienced before. I mean, like I said, we've had Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Day of the Triffids. Here we have Tommyknockers, Edgar Wright, who I had discussed in my review of the Running Man from 2025. Back in 2012, 2013, he did the conclusion to the Cornetto trilogy, World's End, which again plays with this same idea of a hive mind, of replacing those around you with facsimiles of the people that you knew. So all of these tropes are not new, are not, and they weren't new at the time of the Tommyknockers, and they're still not new now. But you have to give Stephen King credit for the things that he contributes to this. The it's not just a hive mind, it's not just this shared experience, it's also speaking, he used it as a metaphor for addiction. In Pluribus, like I said, there's a lot to discuss and there's a lot to mine from it. I'm kind of going on a tangent there, but Pluribus, I mean, if you are listening to this and you like this idea of a hive mind and an invading alien intelligence, then when you watch Pluribus, you're going to get a show that's operating on a very, very high level. That again, I do want to warn everyone, if you have not seen it, it is very slow and deliberate. But with that slow and deliberate nature to the show, you are getting a lot of introspection and contemplation and incredible visual flourishes and filmmaking. When you see the hive mind operating, you're watching incredible acting choreography, and it's just an incredibly well thought out show. But anyway, back to Tommyknockers, an equally well thought out television show. Threatened by the townspeople, Guard attempts to flee, but he's stopped by a glowing green light, which is now setting up a barrier around the town, which makes it impenetrable for him to cross with the metal plate in his head. He's forced into imprisonment and forced labor at the hands of the possessed town people. But it's not just the town that's possessed, it's the machinery as well. When Butch and Ev return to do some investigating, Butch is taken out in hilarious fashion by the Coke machine with a mind of its own, first shooting quarters at him, and then the bottles, before exploding in a ball of fire and taking him with it. It's a stupid way to go. It's very reminiscent of Maximum Overdrive, a movie that is so gloriously bad and definitely well worth watching. I reviewed it on this podcast many years ago. Check it out. But that was that aligns itself very, very closely to the absurdity and over the top appliance machines attacks from that movie. That night, Guard sneaks into the shed to find Ev, Ruth, and Pete as well, and they're all being used as living batteries. Guard pours the last remaining hooch down the drain and realizes that he needs to trick Bobby and the rest of the townspeople to stay alive and to stop the Tommyknockers before whatever they have planned comes to fruition. He removes a tooth and he shows it to Bobby to prove to her that he has started to become. They head to the dig site and they find their way in, descending into the ship. The design of this ship from the inside and the alien props, it's gloriously early 90s. It just made me think of shows like Sightings, of Alien Autopsy, and actually made me think of one particular episode towards the end of the show Gravity Falls, where Dipper and Ford explore an ancient buried alien spacecraft in the woods of their small town. which I'm sure Alex Hirsch was thinking of the Tommyknockers when he made it. For those of you who have not seen Gravity Falls, I've talked about this on this show. It was part of my review back in December of 2024. I believe it was the New Year's Eve episode where I talked about some cartoons that you can watch with your kids that have all of the things that you like about um, speculative fiction and horror pop culture that are safe and fun to watch as a family. Um, Here in the uh, spaceship, um, Guard finds the batterized body of Davy. Guard and Bobby fight amidst spirit Halloween fog. Guard gets through to Bobby and gets into a fist fight with a resurrected alien. He decapitates it with a space axe, and has one last moment with Bobby, who has now been purged of the Tommyknocker energy through the power of love. They free Davy. Bobby takes him home, and Guard sacrifices himself to fly the ship into space to save the town. A still possessed Nancy goes after Bobby, who is trying to free the human batteries in her shed, while Guard uses his new ship powers to fight off the surviving aliens. Revived Ev kills Nancy. Guard explodes the ship. Davy is reunited with his mother, and Bobby frees Pete from his prison. So, like I said, I think that this isn't good. I mean, it's not a good movie. No one's going to say that it's a good movie. But for those of you who, lived through the early '90s TV miniseries and just sensibilities, if you do want to just kind of feel that time period again, this is just that maximalized. The sound of the music, the music itself that they use. Um, I just don't feel like they make movies with this kind of just soft music. You'll know what I mean when you listen to it. Just the aspect ratio for one will transport you to a time, and like I said, all of the actors and actresses that you see. You'll recognize them from movies and television from earlier points in your life. Except for Jimmy Smits, who looks exactly the same, which is incredible. Marg Hellenberger, who went on to have a long career in. Was she on NCIS? She was on one of those shows, CSU, something like that. But good for her. I remember once I heard her name, not I never watched the shows, but I immediately thought of the Tommyknockers. I'm like, oh, Marg Hellenberger. I only know her from the Tommyknockers. Good for her. But so I'm glad that she, had a long and successful career still on television with a very popular franchise. Like I said, Tracy Lords, I think, did an incredible job in this movie. She kind of understood that she was in a cartoon, and she played it thusly, and she did a great job with it. Um, E.G. Marshall plays a very warm and commanding presence as Ev. Robert Carradine, Joanna Cassidy. All of these characters are characters, John Ashton, that you're going to recognize. And it's great to just soak up the nostalgia for what this is. And that's definitely the highlight to the Tommyknockers. And as I said, the nostalgia aside, watching it in 2026 with the understanding of the role that AI is playing in our society today and how it is overtaking creativity. People are becoming more reliant on it. The AI data centers are actively harming the environment and the people around it in order to support this automated artificial form of creativity. It is very prescient in a way that Stephen King, I don't think that he was thinking about this at the time, because to me, as you'll know in my original review of the novel, it speaks more about an allegory for addiction than it does anything else. But now that we are living in this world where you see AI wherever you go, um, at the cost of our own humanity, to have a story that is all about this technology that we don't understand being able to do things that we always hoped that it would at our own cost. It's something that I think speaks to today, in a very clear, very scary, very scary way. So I know that there had been talks of a Tommyknockers remake, produced by James Wan. From what I understand, I know that I reported about it back when that came out. What, 2018 is when I think that was first reported. I think that movie is dead. But if you were to tell this story now in the world that we're living in, having it be a metaphor for AI would not be a bad way to go. Again, I had a lot of fun with this book. It's a very bloated book, but I had fun with this book. And I think there's a lot of potential to mine this story the way that Bobby and the townspeople mine the ground, for the materials within, to tell and unearth something that is going to be resonant, and will fuel conversation about who we are, at this day and age, and where we are going, and the horrors of what we should expect. So, Tommyknockers, 1993 ABC TV miniseries. Not a good movie, but I think that I had fun watching it. It transported me right back. It goes down easy. It is just, it's comfort. It's clearly something that you could just fire up on YouTube, watch on your television while you have a second screen going, or you're folding laundry or whatever. There are worse ways to spend your time. All right. So next week, what I'm going to be doing, I will be discussing the 1994. I already talked about this a little bit earlier in this episode, but I will spend a significant amount of time talking about the importance of 1994's Mick Garris directed adaptation of The Stand. Now, when I first reviewed The Stand, I was not as positive on it as I had been when I watched it in my youth, and I have retracted my thoughts from that original review that I did. So I was very happy to go back and revise my review of ABC's The Stand. So look forward to that next week, because I have a lot to say about the importance of The Stand as a cultural touchstone, from the impressive direction of Mick Garris and the production that he oversaw. And I am now able to compare it to the 2020 version starring Alexander Skarsgård, which wasn't something that existed at the time of the original review. So there's a lot to discuss next week with The Stand. I hope that you enjoy. If at any point you have anything that you want to contribute about the Tommyknockers, something that I missed, talking about Pluribus, talking about the role of AI in our lives, things that I might have missed, or anything related to Stephen King or The Stand, or anything that I've been talking about, write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. Feel free to follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. And when you have a chance, please leave a review on iTunes. And may you have long days and pleasant nights, and I will see you here next time, where MOON spells Stephen King Cast.